The greatest prison is not made of stone. It is not guarded by walls, locks, or chains. It is built inside the mind, one moment of rejection at a time. Every ignored message, every closed door, every friendship that faded, every opportunity that slipped away, every person who chose someone else instead of you. Most people carry these moments like invisible weights, believing they reveal something about their worth. They begin to see rejection not as an event, but as an identity. They stop asking, "What happened?" and start asking, "What is wrong with me?" This is where suffering begins, not in the rejection itself, but in the story we attach to it. The Stoics understood something that remains almost impossible for the modern mind to accept. They believed that no person possesses the power to diminish your value unless you willingly surrender that authority. The opinion of another human being cannot reduce your character. Their decision cannot erase your virtue. Their silence cannot define your significance. Yet countless people spend decades allowing strangers, acquaintances, employers, lovers, and even family members to determine how they feel about themselves. They hand over the keys to their inner peace without realizing they have done so. Imagine living in such a way that rejection loses its power completely. Imagine hearing no, watching someone walk away, seeing an opportunity disappear, and remaining perfectly steady inside. Not because you no longer care about people, but because your foundation no longer depends upon them. This is not emotional numbness. It is not arrogance. It is not pretending disappointment does not exist. It is something much stronger. It is freedom. The philosopher who cannot be bought is admired, but the philosopher who cannot be emotionally manipulated is truly invincible. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself again and again that the soul becomes dyed by the color of its thoughts. Notice what this means. The event itself is colorless. Your interpretation gives it meaning. Two people experience the same rejection. One collapses into despair, convinced life has turned against him. The other quietly thanks fate for revealing a path that was never meant to be his. The same event. Two entirely different lives. This is why Stoicism begins not with changing the world, but with changing perception. Before you can become immune to rejection, you must understand what rejection actually is. Most people never question it. They assume rejection means they were measured and found lacking. But is that true? Or is it simply a conclusion invented by an insecure mind desperate for certainty? Think carefully about how many decisions you make every day. You choose one meal instead of another, one book instead of another, one road instead of another, one conversation instead of another. Does every choice mean the alternative was worthless? Of course not. Preference is not judgment. Circumstance is not condemnation. Yet when another person chooses differently, the ego instantly transforms their preference into a verdict about your entire existence. The Stoics warned repeatedly against confusing appearances with reality. What appears to be rejection may actually be protection. What feels like loss may be preparation. What seems like failure may become the very obstacle that develops the strength your future requires. The difficulty is that human beings crave immediate explanations. When we do not receive the outcome we wanted, we invent one. Usually the explanation blames ourselves because uncertainty feels more painful than self-criticism, but reality is rarely so simple. Perhaps the opportunity disappeared because another path holds greater meaning. Perhaps the relationship ended because your values were incompatible. Perhaps the employer overlooked your talents because they were searching for qualities unrelated to excellence. Perhaps another person's inability to recognize your worth says far more about their limitations than yours. Epictetus taught that we should concern ourselves only with what belongs to us. Our judgments belong to us. Our actions belong to us. Our intentions belong to us. Another person's preferences do not. Their emotions do not. Their choices do not. The moment you attempt to control another person's approval, You have abandoned your own kingdom and entered territory where you possess no authority. This explains why so many people feel exhausted. They spend every day managing impressions instead of developing character. They calculate every sentence before speaking, hoping everyone will approve. They constantly wonder whether others like them enough, admire them enough, respect them enough. Their emotional state changes according to every compliment and every criticism. They become like leaves tossed by the wind, unable to remain still because their peace depends entirely upon conditions they cannot control. The Stoic walks a different path. He asks a much simpler question. Did I act with integrity? Did I remain just? Was I courageous? Did the first exercise wisdom? If the answer is yes, then external outcomes become secondary. Rejection cannot erase virtue. Failure cannot erase discipline. Criticism cannot erase honesty. This mindset does not emerge overnight. It requires the deliberate rebuilding of one's internal architecture. For years, perhaps decades, you have been trained to measure yourself through external approval. From childhood, praise became a reward and criticism became a punishment. Gradually, you learned to associate acceptance with safety and rejection with danger. The brain remembers these emotional patterns long after childhood has ended. Modern life intensifies this conditioning. Every notification, every like, every promotion, every invitation becomes another measurement of social acceptance. People begin chasing validation so relentlessly that they no longer know what they genuinely desire. They pursue careers because they impress others. They enter relationships because they fear loneliness. They remain silent because honesty might provoke rejection. The Stoics would recognize this immediately as slavery. A slave is not merely someone whose body belongs to another. A slave is anyone whose peace depends upon another person's permission. If someone can ruin your entire day simply by ignoring you, they possess enormous power over your emotional world. If criticism destroys your confidence, then your confidence never truly belonged to you. If rejection convinces you that your worth has diminished, then your worth was always being borrowed from outside yourself. True freedom begins the moment you reclaim ownership of your own evaluation. This does not mean refusing feedback. Stoicism never encouraged ignorance or pride. Wise criticism can reveal blind spots. Honest correction can strengthen character. But there is an enormous difference between learning from criticism and becoming emotionally imprisoned by it. One develops wisdom. The other destroys peace. Consider the blacksmith standing before a blazing furnace. Every strike of the hammer appears violent. Sparks fly. Steel bends. The metal is subjected to relentless pressure. Yet without these blows, the sword remains weak. The very force that seems destructive becomes the instrument of refinement. Human character develops the same way. Every rejection offers two possibilities. It can harden your resentment or strengthen your resilience. It can convince you to hide from future risks or teach you that survival does not depend upon universal acceptance. The event remains identical. Your interpretation determines whether it becomes poison or medicine. Marcus Aurelius faced rejection repeatedly throughout his life. As emperor, he governed during wars, disease, political betrayal, and constant criticism. No decision pleased everyone. Every action created opponents. Had he required universal approval before acting, the empire would have descended into paralysis. Instead, he reminded himself daily that the task was not to satisfy every observer but to fulfill his duty with integrity. There is extraordinary peace hidden inside this principle. You are not responsible for convincing everyone. You are responsible only for becoming someone worthy of self-respect. Imagine how much energy becomes available once you stop trying to control opinions. Conversations become lighter because you're no longer performing. Decisions become clearer because they are guided by principles rather than popularity. Relationships become healthier because they are built upon authenticity instead of constant. People pleasing. Ironically, those who desperately seek acceptance often become less respected. Why? Because desperation is visible. People sense when someone is negotiating away their own values simply to avoid rejection. Confidence cannot coexist with constant approval seeking. Strength cannot coexist with dependency. The Stoics discovered an unexpected paradox. The less you require validation, the more naturally respect begins to emerge. Not because you demand it, but because independence possesses a quiet gravity. A person who remains calm without applause becomes remarkably difficult to manipulate. This is why strategic silence became such an important Stoic practice. Not every misunderstanding deserves correction. Not every accusation deserves an answer. Not every insult deserves a defense. The insecure person believes silence signals weakness. The Stoic understands that silence often reveals mastery. When someone rejects you unfairly, the immediate impulse is to explain yourself, to persuade them, to prove your value. But ask yourself a deeper question. If your worth truly exists, why must it be argued into existence? The oak tree does not announce its strength. The mountain does not defend its height. The ocean does not explain its depth. Reality requires no advertisement. Likewise, genuine character does not depend upon endless justification. There are moments when walking away demonstrates more power than winning an argument. There are opportunities that become blessings precisely because they disappeared. There are people whose rejection ultimately protects your future. Yet you cannot recognize these truths while desperately chasing what has already chosen to leave. One of the greatest illusions is believing that every closed door represents failure. Sometimes the closed door prevents you from entering a room where your character would slowly deteriorate. Sometimes losing the relationship saves you from years of compromise. Sometimes missing the promotion forces you to develop abilities that eventually create opportunities beyond anything you originally imagined. The Stoics practiced what later became known as loving one's fate. This did not mean pretending painful experiences were pleasant. It meant recognizing that every event could become useful if approached with wisdom. Rejection is simply another material life places into your hands. You decide whether to build a prison or a staircase. Notice the people who possess extraordinary inner peace. They are rarely the ones who experienced no rejection. More often, they are individuals who encountered disappointment so many times that they eventually stopped interpreting it as a personal attack. They learned that life continues, character continues, purpose continues. Every rejection survived becomes evidence of your resilience. This changes your relationship with fear. Instead of asking, "What if they reject me?" you begin asking, "If they reject me, what virtue will I practice?" Courage becomes available because rejection no longer represents emotional death. It becomes another opportunity to strengthen patience, humility, wisdom, or discipline. Fear loses much of its influence when its consequences are no longer catastrophic. Most people avoid conversations, opportunities, businesses, relationships, and dreams because they are attempting to avoid rejection. Ironically, in avoiding rejection, they reject themselves first. They abandon possibilities before reality ever has the chance to respond. They choose the certainty of regret over the uncertainty of temporary disappointment. The Stoic refuses this. He understands that external outcomes remain uncertain, but internal excellence remains available every single day. Whether accepted or rejected, praised or criticized, welcomed or ignored, he still possesses complete authority over his response. And in that response lies the only victory that can never be taken away. The most dangerous form of rejection is not the one that comes from another person. It is the rejection you quietly direct toward yourself. It happens so gradually that you hardly notice it. Every time you silence your own convictions to gain approval, every time you hide your authentic thoughts because they might offend someone, Every time you abandon your principles to avoid criticism, you send yourself a devastating message. You begin to believe that your true self is not worthy of being seen. This inner betrayal wounds the soul far more deeply than any refusal the outside world could ever deliver. The Stoics believed that integrity is the highest form of self-respect because it cannot be purchased, negotiated, or borrowed. It must be earned through consistent action. A person who remains faithful to virtue, even when misunderstood, possesses a strength that circumstances cannot erase. Such a person does not need universal acceptance, because they have already secured the only acceptance that truly matters, the quiet approval of their own conscience. This is why Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to the same question: not whether others admired him, not whether history would remember him kindly, but whether he had fulfilled the responsibilities placed before him with justice, wisdom, courage, and moderation. He understood that every day offered countless opportunities to compromise these principles in exchange for temporary comfort. Yet every compromise carried an invisible cost. It weakened the inner foundation upon which lasting peace depends. Modern culture encourages exactly the opposite. It teaches people to curate themselves endlessly, to present whatever version of their personality attracts the most applause. Success is often measured by visibility rather than substance, popularity rather than character, recognition rather than contribution. Under such conditions, rejection becomes terrifying because identity itself has been attached to public opinion. The Stoic quietly steps away from this exhausting competition. He no longer asks how many people noticed him. He asks whether his actions reflected excellence. He no longer worries about whether everyone understands his intentions. He worries only that his intentions remain honorable. In doing so, he escapes a race that has no finish line. There is a remarkable calm that enters life when you stop demanding that everyone validate your existence. You begin noticing how much emotional energy was wasted pursuing impossible goals. You cannot force admiration. You cannot guarantee affection. You cannot control loyalty. Even the wisest individuals in history were criticized, misunderstood, ridiculed, and opposed. Consider how often truth itself has been rejected before eventually being recognized. Innovators were mocked. Philosophers were dismissed. Artists died unknown. Leaders acting with integrity were slandered by those threatened by their example. If rejection alone proved lack of value, history would have discarded many of humanity's greatest contributions. The lesson is obvious, though difficult to practice. Public response is an unreliable measure of intrinsic worth. Once this realization settles deeply into the mind, another transformation begins. You stop interpreting every obstacle as a verdict against you. Instead, obstacles become information. A failed interview teaches preparation. A broken relationship reveals compatibility. A disappointing outcome exposes weaknesses that can be strengthened. The pain remains real, but it is no longer meaningless. This is the essence of amor fati, the love of fate. To love fate does not require enjoying suffering. It requires trusting that every experience contains material for growth. Imagine a sculptor receiving an enormous block of rough stone. An untrained observer sees only an obstacle. The sculptor sees possibility. Every strike of the chisel removes what is unnecessary. Every imperfection becomes part of the final masterpiece. Your life unfolds in much the same way. Rejection removes illusions. It exposes unhealthy attachments. It reveals where your confidence depends upon fragile foundations. It forces uncomfortable questions that success often allows us to ignore. Who am I when applause disappears? What remains when admiration fades? What part of me cannot be taken away by another person's decision? These questions lead directly toward freedom. Freedom is not getting everything you desire. Freedom is no longer believing that your peace depends upon getting everything you desire. There is immense strength in recognizing that disappointment and destruction are not the same thing. A dream may change without your identity collapsing. A relationship may end without your dignity disappearing. An opportunity may vanish without your future being ruined. Human beings possess a remarkable capacity to recover, adapt, and rebuild, but only if they stop insisting that life unfold exactly according to their original plans. The Stoics often reflected on impermanence for precisely this reason. Everything external is temporary. Wealth changes hands. Beauty fades. Positions are lost. Fame disappears. Even the opinions people hold today may reverse tomorrow. Building your happiness upon unstable foundations guarantees continual anxiety. Character alone remains dependable. Every act of patience strengthens patience. Every act of honesty strengthens honesty. Every courageous decision makes courage more natural the next time. These qualities become permanent possessions because they exist within your own choices rather than external circumstances. When rejection arrives, therefore, it cannot steal what matters most. Perhaps this is why some of the calmest people seem almost impossible to intimidate. They have already accepted that loss belongs to life. They no longer negotiate with reality. They cooperate with it. Instead of asking why difficult things happen, they ask how wisdom should respond. Notice how radically this changes everyday interactions. Someone ignores your message. Instead of inventing stories about your inadequacy, you continue living according to your values. Someone criticizes your work. You examine the criticism honestly. Keep what is useful, discard what is malicious, and continue improving. Someone leaves your life unexpectedly. You grieve without surrendering your identity. You appreciate what existed without clinging to what no longer does. Someone rejects your ambition. You remember that another person's imagination does not define your potential. This is emotional maturity in its highest form. It neither suppresses emotion nor becomes enslaved by it. Feelings are acknowledged, understood, and then guided by reason instead of allowed to dominate judgment. The world desperately needs more people capable of this balance. Imagine families where disagreements do not become personal wars. Imagine workplaces where criticism becomes an opportunity for excellence instead of an attack upon identity. Imagine friendships built upon honesty instead of constant reassurance. Imagine individuals courageous enough to pursue meaningful lives regardless of whether everyone approves. Such people become rare precisely because they refuse to participate in the endless exchange of validation. They become difficult to manipulate because fear no longer governs their decisions. They become dependable because principles guide them more consistently than emotions. They become peaceful because their happiness rests upon something stable. This is not perfection. Stoicism never promises immunity from sadness or disappointment. Even the greatest philosophers experienced grief, frustration, and uncertainty. The difference is that they refused to let temporary emotions become permanent identities. They experienced pain without surrendering to despair. They encountered rejection without concluding they were unworthy. That distinction changes everything. Perhaps the next rejection you experience will not feel pleasant. It should not. Human beings naturally hope for acceptance, connection, and success. Stoicism does not ask you to eliminate these hopes. It asks you to refuse making them conditions for your inner peace. Hope without attachment. Effort without desperation. Ambition without dependency. Love without possession. Confidence without arrogance. These are the quiet paradoxes that produce extraordinary resilience. When your worth depends upon virtue instead of validation, rejection becomes lighter. When your peace depends upon character instead of circumstances, uncertainty becomes less frightening. When your happiness depends upon your own judgments rather than the opinions of strangers, freedom quietly enters your life. And one day, perhaps sooner than you expect, you will notice something remarkable. A door closes, and you remain calm. Someone misunderstands you, and you no longer rush to defend yourself. An opportunity disappears, and instead of asking, "Why me?" you ask, "What can this teach me?" Another person chooses a different path, and you sincerely wish them well while continuing your own journey. In that moment, you will realize that the secret was never about avoiding rejection. It was about refusing to reject yourself. The world may continue to judge, compare, criticize, overlook, and misunderstand you. That has always been the nature of human society, and it always will be. But none of those forces possess the authority to define your character unless you willingly grant them that privilege. So guard your inner citadel carefully. Protect it from resentment. Protect it from the endless hunger for approval. Protect it from the illusion that your value rises and falls with the opinions of others. Each morning, remind yourself that your responsibility is not to control outcomes, but to control your response. Each evening, ask not whether the world applauded you, but whether you lived according to your highest principles. If the answer is yes, then you have already achieved something no rejection can ever take away. Walk forward with quiet confidence. Speak less, but mean every word. Work diligently, even when no one notices. Stand firmly, even when misunderstood. Accept every obstacle as another opportunity to refine your character. And remember this final truth. The person who no longer fears rejection cannot be manipulated by praise, intimidated by criticism, or distracted by comparison. Such a person becomes free not because life has become easier, but because they have finally discovered that the source of lasting peace was never outside themselves. It was within them all along.